And we are back. Thank you so much for staying with us. And in case you're just joining us, welcome to Kenya's Gold, where the focus of today, as has been over the last couple of Thursdays, is on innovation and technology and value addition in the space of agriculture. We are wrapping up that series, and that's why we've had a very fantastic conversation with different people in the field of value addition. But now, as earlier promised, we are joined by our expert, who's Dr. Mangi Lal Jat, who is the Global Research Program Director at ICRISAT. Thank you so very much for making time to be with us today. Now, ICRISAT stands for International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, and I want you to shed more light to us as the farmers in these regions, what we can do to make sure that we're still providing enough food, and also we are adapting to what climate change has become. So when we're talking about the semi-arid tropics, these regions are characterized by minimal rains, a lot of drought. Please talk to us some more about how climate change has continued to impact agriculture in these regions.
Thank you so much. Climate change is one of the major threats. And over past decades, we see more of the intensive effects of the climate change. Induced variability of the weather, which is leading to dry spells, the longer dry spells, but also floods in the same areas. And in that context, it's causing problem not only from the crop perspective, but also land degradation, which is one of the important features of all the semi-arid tropics, especially the dryland areas of the semi-arid tropics. So climate change is posing a major threat to the drylands specifically, because in water areas where there is a facility of the irrigation, they can cover up some of the effects of the climate change, but dry areas have no availability of the water, so it's causing a serious problem to the dryland areas. And in that context, we need new technologies, new innovations to support farmers to cope up with the risks of the climate change. And in that context, as you mentioned, ICRISAT is working in the semi-arid tropics of Africa and Asia, where we are developing technologies and innovations which help the dryland farmers. And in that context, we work on the crops which are climate resilient, drought tolerant, which are nutrient dense, and which are important for the livestock as a fodder as well. But at the same time, we also work on seed systems, because seed need to reach to the farmers.
Right.
So delivering those seed systems, and then we develop the landscape scale innovations in terms of the resilient agronomy, and also the scale appropriate mechanization, because nowadays youth don't want to go to agriculture. We need to attract them. To attract youth, I think we need agribusiness and business models, especially the digital technology. So we are heavy on the digital innovations, and then we create enabling environment and agribusiness value chains, agribusiness innovations to engage youth, but also help farmers to get more income. And that we do across the value chain and bring the new partnerships and do work better.
Great. So let's talk about these crops, the drought-resistant crops that farmers in the semi-arid regions can take advantage of, especially now in the wake of climate change.
Yeah, so the drought-tolerant crops, what we work on are millets. We celebrated International Year of Millets in 2023, bringing a focus on the millets, because millets are the crops of the drylands. And the millets are the nutrient-rich crops, which are traditional crops. We work on the sorghum, the minor millets, but also the legumes, which are important from the soil's perspective. So the Africa launched the soils initiative, last year. And that need how to improve the soil health in these areas. So we need to have the legumes into the cropping systems. We work on the chickpeas, we work on the pigeon peas, but also the oil seeds like groundnut. Those are the drought-tolerant crop, but at the same time nutrient-dense crops, which are good for the soil, good for the planet, good for the people, and good for the farmers. And then take care of the climatic risks. So those are the important crops we work on.
Right. So when you talk about sorghum, sorghum used to actually be our staple food until it was replaced by maize when the Portuguese introduced it to us. And now we're trying to tell farmers again, let's go back to that sorghum which we neglected and went to maize. Why do you think farmers moved away from that, and what will it take to start talking to them back into these crops that used to be there but are no longer as common as they used to be?
See, there are different issues around that. One is, at times when there is a favorable environment, they may see more chances of the better productivity in case of maize, and maize hybrids came in. Still, Africa is a bit behind in terms of the hybrids and the high yielding. But I think if we see the example, last year's drought in Zimbabwe, where it was only sorghum which survived or millet survived, not maize. So I think, when we talk about the climate change, I think sorghum need to be back, millets need to be back. And climate change led those variabilities happening every year. So, and also the value chain and market linkages and bringing the maize stover as an important fodder. When we link it to the livestock and we talk about climate change, livestock is emitting a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. But if you feed the sorghum fodder to livestock, the emission is going to be less than compared to the maize. So I think we need to see the picture, in a different perspective now to address the larger challenges.
Right. So you've mentioned the drought in Zimbabwe, which happened a better part of last year.
Yes.
It was actually so bad to a point it was now a national disaster. And it's nice to hear you say that sorghum and millet are the ones that survived, not the maize. So I believe that will be a wake-up call for someone who's looking for what a drought-resistant crop can be. But let's talk about, let's say, a country like here in Kenya, where, of course, we do experience a lot of drought sometimes, but we also have situations where there's flood. And we know the effect of floods when it comes to agriculture, carrying away the topsoil, reducing the fertility of the soil. Now, already as we speak, there are regions that are experiencing a lot of floods. So in the future, so that we are not caught off guard, what measures can we put in place, especially for the people in the agricultural space, to prepare ourselves for these shockers? Because now we know they will be happening. They don't have to keep finding us unprepared all the time. What do we do?
I think we have to prepare for the future.
Right.
And from that future, we don't have the quick fixes. We need to think, for the future. And what ICRISAT does on that perspective is we take a landscape approach, not a smaller scale, plot level, farm level, but a broader landscape approach. And when we talk about the broader landscape, we design the landscape using the innovative science, where you see what crops can go in which part of the landscape. So there is opportunity to bring all those crops where there is more water or less water on the upslopes, on downslopes, all those things. It's not like this or that. We need to see what works where. And that's what we target. And then we bring, because we are bringing those crops, we need to bring the market opportunities for the farmers. Because bringing a crop is important, but then if there is no market around, or we don't create the value chains and markets, then farmers face the problem. And then they don't accept the technology. So that's what we are doing. And yesterday we launched our vision for drylands in Africa. And there was a farmer talking about how the technologies and capacity development, what we have done, helped right here from the Kenya, making the cakes from sorghum.
Right.
So those are the kind of value-added products which can really help farmers.
Right. So finally, as we wind up this conversation, given that we're speaking to the farmers in the semi-arid regions, talk to us about water conservation. Because yes, there are times when we have the water, we have a lot of floods, water is flowing everywhere, and then the next season, it's a desert, it's dry. So give us a bit of tips that our small-scale farmers can embrace when it comes to conserving the water that we sometimes have.
Thanks. I think that's a very, very important aspect when we talk about resilience of the farming. Now, in terms of the water conservation, and I'm talking about the rainwater, there are two ways. One is at the community level, because sometimes we cannot harvest the water at a plot level, because there's a lot of water and you cannot conserve that. It has to go somewhere. So community need to come together so that they find a way where water should go, and we design the landscapes in a way where we don't degrade the soil.
Great.
The another aspect is in terms of the in situ, where it stores. And that depends, if there is a less rainfall, I think in situ water harvesting is important. But there is a lot of rainfall, torrential rains, then we need to think about the ex-situ water harvesting. And then you reuse that water when it is required. There's a dry spell time. And that's where we work on this landscape approach, scientifically designed landscapes.
All right. Thank you so very much. Dr. Mangi Lal Jat, who is the Global Research Program Director at ICRISAT. Thank you for speaking to us in our Gold Conversation. And we believe our farmers have learned what they need to do when it comes to drought-resistant crops. and also the conservation of water. Now it's time for us to take our second break, but when we come back, we're going to bring back our guests, and hopefully I'm going to eat some more today on the program. It's all about eating, so do stick around with that. We do have a lot more coming back to you after this break.